42 facts you may or may not know about Ace Combat. Ready, set, Ace Combat got its start back in 1995 on the PlayStation with, well, Ace Combat, or as it was known outside of Japan, Air Combat. Featuring bare-bones gameplay with no special weapons, no enemy aces, no allies aside from taking a wingman with you into battle, and various other mainstay features absent here, Air Combat can be a bit of a shock to play if you decide to try it out for yourself. But regardless of how gracefully or not so gracefully it is aged, if it weren't for this game, we wouldn't have Ace Combat as it's known today. And for anyone about to comment that the true start to the Ace Combat franchise was back when Air Combat, an arcade cabinet game by the same name, not to be confused with the PS1 game, and Air Combat 22 came out, I do see where you're coming from. However, I consider those games, as the Ace Combat wiki describes it, predecessors to the Ace Combat franchise. Meaning, as much as they laid the foundation for the franchise, I don't consider those games to be the true start to Ace Combat. Contrary to popular belief, Ace Combat Assault Horizon is not the first Ace Combat game to feature a speaking protagonist. Ace Combat 2 has that honor, with Scarface 1 talking during the landing minigames.
Power, this is Scarface 1, on final approach. Guide me in. Scarface 1, clear to land. On the platform.
Ace Combat 2 is the first game in the franchise that features enemy aces. Enemy aces in Ace Combat 2 have upgraded AI, and if you're able to shoot them down, not only do you get a big credit bonus, but you also get medals for each enemy ace that you shoot down. Ace Combat 2 is also the first game in the franchise to have multiple endings, 3 of them to be exact. A normal, bonus, and bad ending. The normal ending is achieved if you play the game as, well, normal. The coup d'etat has been suppressed with the legitimate government back in power. The bonus ending is achieved if you're able to shoot down a ZOE aircraft during Kingpin. It doesn't matter which ZOE aircraft it is, just so long as you shoot it down, you'll unlock 2 extra missions, Last Resort and Fighter's Honor. The coup forces are entirely wiped out instead of just suppressed, with the legitimate government back into power. And the bad ending is achieved if you fail to destroy the SLBM in Last Resort, where the recently liberated St. Arc gets wiped off the map. Ace Combat 3 Electorsphere is where special weapons were introduced to the franchise for the first time. With Air Combat and Ace Combat 2, you just had a cannon along with standard missiles. You get both of those, plus some other types of weapons in Ace Combat 3. MIRV missiles, unguided bombs, pulse lasers that serve as your cannon replacement for the Newcom aircraft, and even a laser satellite. Ace Combat 3 is known for having 2 versions, the beloved Japanese version and the loathed international version. The reason the international version is disliked, or at the very least considered the inferior version by Ace Combat players, is because everything that made the Japanese version so good was gutted. Faction swaps, animated cutscenes, a restricted list of aircraft depending on which faction you're a part of, in-game dialogue, all of that and more was removed. How come? The game was first released in Japan on May 27, 1999. The plan was to have the game be released in Japan first, and then a translation team would be subcontracted by Namco for the US and European releases. However, early on in the translation process, Namco cut the funding for it, leaving the team in charge of the international version no choice but to cut out a lot of the story elements that were originally going to be included. There has never been an officially stated reason by anyone as to why the funding was cut. However, the most likely reason is that Namco wanted to cut their losses after they deemed Ace Combat 3 a financial failure in Japan. Given that Ace Combat 3 was the most expensive game to develop in the franchise's history at this point, the sales targets were probably much higher this time around. Namco, seeing the game not selling as well as they had hoped and therefore not making a profit, didn't want to spend any more money than they had to. So, they cut the funding for the translation efforts, which meant things like the animated cutscenes and voice acting all had to be tossed out the window. This started a domino effect that resulted in the gameplay of the international version of Ace Combat 3 needing to be changed dramatically. Because there weren't animated cutscenes to flesh out the story depending on which faction you were a part of, faction swapping was cut. Because the faction swapping mechanic was cut, it wouldn't make sense for the player to only have access to a select few aircraft at any given moment. So the progression had to be changed to allow the player to have access to all of the aircraft at any given moment. You see what I mean? The international version had to be entirely upended, all because, in my opinion, the leadership at Namco hit the panic button too early. If Namco had waited it out a little bit longer, it's possible that sales could have improved and the translation efforts would have gone through. Ace Combat 4 Shattered Skies, also known as Ace Combat Distant Thunder in Europe, was considered a series reboot by the developers as they were making it. In fact, the team even went as far as to title the game Ace Combat 01 in early design docs, signaling that they were planning to take everything they had learned from the first 3 games and start fresh. A lot more was riding on Ace Combat 4 being a success than people may realize. Again, Ace Combat 3 was considered a financial failure by Namco, so the idea of investing another game may have sounded a bit scary to some. In fact, the devs were given less resources to work with when making Ace Combat 4, hence why, to give one example, instead of animated cutscenes, the cinematics of the game are just sets of still images. If Ace Combat 4 was another financial failure in the eyes of Namco, that would have either marked the decline of Ace Combat, as the devs would have even less resources to work with for their next title, or the death of the franchise as a whole. Thankfully, Ace Combat 4 went on to be the best-selling Ace Combat game the series had seen yet. Speaking of Ace Combat 4 being the best-selling game in the franchise, it would continue to wear that crown for years. No other Ace Combat game could seem to beat the 2.64 million copies that Ace Combat 4 sold. It wouldn't be until Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown that the series would have a new best-selling game, with over 7 million copies sold as of January 2026. Will Ace Combat 8 Wings of Thief manage to beat this new record? We'll have to wait and see. Also, for anyone wondering why I listed 1.8 million sales for Assault Horizon, that's the official sales total that the Ace Combat Wiki gives. However, if you go to the video game sales wiki, Assault Horizon is listed as having sold 1.07 million copies. So I can understand the confusion as to which sales figure is accurate. Personally, I'm sticking with the Ace Combat Wiki sales figure. The PS2 Ace Combat games have different names depending on if you're talking about the PAL versions or any of the other versions. For PAL regions, Ace Combat 4 Shattered Skies is called Ace Combat Distant Thunder. Ace Combat 5 The Unsung War is called Ace Combat Squadron Leader, and Ace Combat 0 The Belkan War is called Ace Combat The Belkan War. Why the numbers were removed and the subtitles were changed is anybody's guess. Ace Combat is known nowadays for having the 3-stage missile alert system. One stage for when the missile is far away, a second for when it's getting close, and a third for when it's about to hit you. But it hasn't always been like this. Air Combat and Ace Combat 2 both have a single solid beep to alert you of an incoming missile.
Bogey on our 6.
Ace Combat 3 was the first time the series experimented with the dynamic missile alert system, with the pace of the beeps being slow or fast depending on how far away or close a missile is.
Warning. Missile alert. Danger. Missile alert. Caution. Damage.
Ace Combat 4 went back to the solid beep, with Ace Combat 5 being the first game that introduced the 3-stage missile alert system. Aside from Joint Assault, where the game goes back to using a solid beep, the 3-stage missile alert has been a mainstay ever since. Nothing strikes fear into you quite like seeing your screen go red and the missile alert instantly skipping to the 3rd stage. Ace Combat has consistently had 3 classifications for its aircraft: fighter, multi-role, and attacker. Fighters being your air-to-air jets, multi-roles being your jack-of-all-trades jets, and attackers being your air-to-ground jets. However, there are a couple of other classifications that occasionally show up throughout the series. Jammer aircraft like the EA-18G Growler have access to electronic countermeasure pods to disrupt enemy lock-on weaponry. Bombers like the B-1 Lancer have access to a massive amount of bombs to decimate any ground targets, and attack helicopters can use their ability to hover in place to deliver concentrated fire on enemies. Helicopters are exclusive to Assault Horizon, and bombers are exclusive to Assault Horizon and Infinity. Speaking of aircraft types, there's one aircraft throughout this franchise that has had a weird history in this regard: the F-15E Strike Eagle. One of the most popular aircraft in the Ace Combat series, the Strike Eagle has bounced back and forth between being classified as either a multi-role or an attacker for quite some time. In Ace Combat 4, it's considered a multi-role. In Ace Combat 5, 0, and X, it's considered an attacker. In Ace Combat 6, it's classified as a multi-role again, only for it to be classified as an attacker again in Joint Assault. And then it swaps back to being a multi-role in Assault Horizon, where it stays that way for Infinity and 7. I'm not sure why the series has gone back and forth on this, especially since, to me at least, the Strike Eagle is a multi-role capable of doing just about anything. Different skins for the aircraft in Ace Combat 6 can have different stats. The Amerian, Estevakian, and the enemy Ace skins all have the base stats of an aircraft, but the DLC skins can change how an aircraft handles wildly. The Mobius 1 F-22, for example, becomes a glass cannon, trading nearly all of its defense for improvements in all other areas. The Thundershark A-10 gives you a lot more ammo to work with, but the thing is made even slower than it already is. The Scarface Su-33 has increased stability, speed, and defense, but has no special weapons, as those weren't a thing in Ace Combat 2. The Gull Su-47 trades a bit of its speed and stability for maxed out mobility. You get the idea. In Joint Assault, if you get a multiplayer lobby going with you and your friends, you'll be able to experience multiplayer variants of some missions in the campaign. Some of these variants you'll even be able to go back and play on your own after that multiplayer session. Meanwhile, others, namely the Joint Assault variants, are multiplayer exclusive. If you're playing some of the older Ace Combat games via emulation, you can upgrade the looks to certain parts of the games beyond an emulator's particular settings through various texture packs. Super Ostrich has made HD texture packs for Ace Combat 4, 5, 0, X, Joint Assault, and Assault Horizon Legacy. These packs do a ton to upgrade the visuals of each game. Heads-up displays look better, the explosion effects for aircraft look better, aircraft skins look better and have extra details thrown in too, weapons on external pylons look better, and just recently, the enemy Ace Squadron intros for Zero got upgraded with higher quality squadron emblems and text. And the best part? It's easy to get these packs working. Super Ostrich gives step-by-step instructions on how to get everything working on each game's individual page. Ace Combat 7 has an incredible mod available on Nexus Mods called Skies Restored. Created by Calamitous and uploaded by Cloaked Enigma, Skies Restored includes a lot of cut voice lines from the game that didn't make it into the final vanilla build.
Mage 2, maintain your element with Mage 1. Do not break off. Mage 1, make sure he doesn't do anything stupid. Welcome. Golem 2, let's maintain element.
Unlike the flight commander, I respect the independence of my guys. It's still a leash, though.
Golem 2, what's your status? Status report.
She's a predator.
Golem 2, get out! Eject now!
Mage 2, support! Somebody! Support! Trigger!
Wilco, Man and McKenzie, please maintain silence for the moment. Trigger got most of them. Maybe even all of them. That was dumb luck, Tabloid. Hey, fraudster. Your tongue is giving away your true identity. Spare 15. Don't take all the fun away from your comrades. The damn bastard ruined it. Captain, don't you see? He walked all over it with his dirty boots, over the crisp white sheets of my bed that I had just made. With the same boots he wore as he stood at a urinal. Let's have him assist in the next plan. It'll make a fine sideshow for our scheme to kill 1 million people. Or was it the plan to save 10 million lives, Command Duty Officer? 3 strikes is still up and flying. Get him on the next run, or is the contract terminated? No refunds. That would cause you more problems, Dawson siblings. A hitman's reputation is everything. Roger that. We'll steal it. Wait for orders.
You know what they call his type? A shitbag.
Alright, fine. He's a shitbag. But he pays well.
Only because it's not your money.
Mission complete. Return to base. Man, I don't want to do that ever again. I'd like to be able to eat, especially without breaking into a cold sweat. We'll have to bet on next time, if there is one.
Watch out for all the fish blown into the sky. You're gonna end up in the history books if you go down from a fish strike. You'll be the laughing stock of the century.
Certainly not how I want to be remembered. The active protection system operated as expected. We should launch another saturation attack while it's recharging. It won't be able to handle this one. Multiple saturation strikes? You want a gold-plated toilet too? Attacking sporadically will overwhelm the enemy's APS.
The mod also includes a number of fixes and updates for the game, such as typo fixes, units being displayed correctly with updated names or updated text colors, different UI elements such as names for different enemy ships and ally units, and more. Unfortunately, as is usually the case with mods, Skies Restored is only available for PC. For a long time, it was assumed that the writer for Assault Horizon's story, Jim DeFelice, had some resentment towards the Ace Combat community due to him getting a ton of shit from fans after the game had been released. However, that's not actually true. As I learned when reaching out to Jim DeFelice regarding his book The Last Ace while I was making my Assault Horizon retrospective, he actually doesn't have any ill will against the fanbase. In my email I sent to DeFelice, I said to him that since he had distanced himself from the Ace Combat community due to the harassment from fans, it would have been perfectly fine if he didn't want to give me a copy of The Last Ace. In his response to me, DeFelice said, "As far as being harassed, I don't think I was. There were definitely legit criticisms of the game, not a few of which some of the developers, including myself, agreed with. But that's true of every game. I certainly have nothing against the fanbase or Namco." What even is The Last Ace, I hear some of you asking? The Last Ace is a prequel story to the events of Assault Horizon. Lieutenant Colonel William Brass Bishop is test flying an advanced F-22 Raptor codenamed Righteous. Or rather, he's overseeing Righteous more than test flying it, given that this Raptor is an AI-controlled machine. Think of it as a prototype of the drones in Ace Combat 7. Bishop is just there to take control in the event that something goes wrong. During this test flight that goes on to become a combat exercise, his mind drifts off to some of his first ever combat experiences during the Bosnian War, with the story switching between that and the combat exercise throughout. During the Bosnian War parts of the story, Bishop is flying with a hard-ass squadron leader, Lieutenant Colonel James Skull Scranton, an amazing pilot hungry for his 5th kill so he can be called an ace. For those of you who noticed, yes, I copied and pasted that description from my Assault Horizon retrospective. Work smarter, not harder. Unfortunately, the book isn't available publicly nowadays. If you want to read it for yourself, your best shot is to contact Jim DeFelice directly and kindly ask for a copy. It's important to note, though, that The Last Ace is not to be sold or distributed. DeFelice will probably tell you that himself in his reply email if he's cool sharing it with you, but I wanted to make note of that as well in my video. According to Jim DeFelice, when he was first contacted to write Assault Horizon's story, he was planning on having it take place in the Strange Real universe. DeFelice had been a fan of Ace Combat, having played the older games, so it was actually a shock to him that the developers specifically requested that the story be set in the real world. I was familiar with the series, having played it since, well, let's just say for a long time. So when I was first contacted, I thought I was going to be writing in the fictional universe of the earlier games. I quickly found out that wasn't the case. The developers, who though Japanese were getting a lot of input from the American side of the company, specifically wanted someone who could create a story in the real world. Ace Combat 6 has 3 medals that you can earn for completing the campaign using only a single aircraft type. Raging Falcon for completing the campaign using only fighters, Blazing Griffin for completing the campaign using only multi-roles, and Night Owl for completing the campaign using only attackers. What makes these medals a little odd in the context of the Ace Combat series as a whole is that Ace Combat 6 has the lowest number of flyable aircraft. 15 of them to be exact. And these medals haven't been seen before or since Ace Combat 6 as of this video. Out of all the games for there to be medals asking you to complete the campaign using only a single aircraft type, why were these medals put in the one with the lowest number of flyable aircraft? In Ace Combat X Skies of Deception, if you force the Gleipnir to fall back to Santa Elva before rescuing the Davis unit, you'll get the B variant of Mission 5 titled Pin Down. Pin Down asks you to protect the Davis unit against Laysath tanks, attack helicopters, and ground attack planes until the cavalry arrives. Getting an S rank on this mission requires the Davis unit's damage to remain below 25%. If you play this mission as intended, where you seek to destroy any and all targets in the airspace, the Laysath forces will continue to spawn. Towards the latter half of the mission, it can be a little tricky to keep track of all the targets in the area, therefore increasing the risk of the Davis unit getting up to 25% damage or more. However, there's an exploit that you can use in order to keep the Laysath forces that show up to a minimum. If you refrain from destroying any of the bridges and you shoot down no more than 2 enemy aircraft, excluding helicopters and the enemy Ace Garuda, the only enemies that'll continue to show up will be tanks. Given how slow those tanks are, you can make quick work of them before they get close to the Davis unit. The rocket launcher in Ace Combat 6 is nuts. Whereas every other Ace Combat game has the RCL as a mess special weapon, in Ace Combat 6, this thing can get stuff done.
Commencing full rocket fire. Target down. Keep on that pressure and they'll break soon.
An interesting thing about them is that depending on the aircraft that you fly, that affects how many rockets are fired in a given volley. When you take a fighter with RCLs into battle, you get a small volley. Whereas if you take an attacker with RCLs into battle, you get a big volley. Ace Combat 6's XLAAs work differently compared to every other game. In every other game, when you fire, the XLAAs immediately begin tracking their target. However, in Ace Combat 6, there's a delay before the tracking kicks in.
We've got left. Garuda team, it's in your hands. We've got to intercept those bombers. Stay within range of the radar facility. That should give you the upper hand in battle. Where are the enemy bombers? Work with our radar facilities on the ground.
This means the XLAAs in 6 are completely useless outside of long-range combat. There are a couple of lesser-known Ace Combat games in the series. Ace Combat Advance for the Game Boy Advance features sandbox top-down gameplay where you take control of a pilot fighting against General Resource. You take to the skies in an attempt to enforce some checks and balances so that the company doesn't get so big it replaces countries and governments. Which, about that. Ace Combat XI Skies of Incursion is a prequel to Skies of Deception, where you take control of Falco 1 fighting against Lasath during the initial 10 days of the invasion of Aurelia. Ace Combat Northern Wings is a short and sweet on-rails top-down shooter where you take control of Grundle 1, an Air Force pilot for Norn Navik. Northern Wings is considered non-canon in the Ace Combat timeline due to it having conflicting actions of how certain events throughout the timeline have occurred. And Ace Combat Assault Horizon Triggerfinger is just you and another person literally waving your phones around to mimic dogfighting. Widely regarded to be one of the worst levels, if not the worst level of all time in Ace Combat, Time Limit in Ace Combat X asks you to drop neutralizing agents to thwart a gas attack. Sounds simple enough. In fact, this exact kind of mission was done before in Ace Combat 5. So what's the issue? It's mentioned in the briefing that due to how hastily this neutralizing agent was put together, it's unstable. If too many G-forces are pushed onto the neutralizing agent, it'll explode and take you down with it. So your movement is restricted because all of a sudden G-forces are a thing to take into consideration for this one brief moment. Painful, but doable. What makes it worse is that enemy fighters spawn midway through the mission, and because you can't take evasive action to dodge any of their attacks, you're effectively at the mercy of RNG. Will the enemies be all up on your ass, or will they just kinda fly around you without attacking? Terrible level. Ace Combat Assault Horizon Legacy, also known as 3D Cross Rumble in Japan, being on the 3DS, has amiibo support. Specifically, if you play the re-release of the game known as Assault Horizon Legacy Plus, you can have access to the following aircraft if you have the following amiibos: a Mario F-22, Luigi F-35, Bowser A-10, Peach Typhoon, Donkey Kong FA-18E, Pac-Man Pac-FA, Link F-14D, Zelda F-15 SE, ADF-01 Fox McCloud, YF-23 Samus, F-16C Captain Falcon, and Pikmin F-4E. Some people may think that the action maneuvers in Assault Horizon Legacy were inspired by Assault Horizon's dogfight mode. It would make sense to believe this. Both mechanics involve you getting up close and personal to the enemy, you press a button to initiate the maneuvers, it's a heavily encouraged part of the gameplay, and Assault Horizon is in the name of the game. However, Assault Horizon is actually not the main inspiration for the action maneuvers. The actual main inspiration for it comes from the Skycrawler's Innocent Aces. Innocent Aces features a similar system, where if you fly close to an enemy, a bar starts to fill up. You commence the action maneuver, and when it's done, you'll be behind your target. The more the bar is filled, the better angle of attack you'll have when the action maneuver is done. If you ever wanted to have achievements to go after in older games that you're emulating, Retro Achievements is the perfect website for you. Retro Achievements allows you to make an account and link it to emulators like DuckStation, PCSX2, and PPSSPP, PP, to enable achievements the community has come up with. As of this video, for Ace Combat specifically, there are achievements for Air Combat, the Japanese version of Ace Combat 3, Ace Combat 4, 5, and 0, along with X, and apparently even Ace Combat Advance. In Assault Horizon and Assault Horizon Legacy, you can change the colors of different parts of an aircraft's current skin. While you can't fully make your own aircraft design from scratch, you can take pre-existing skins and make them your own by swapping the colors around. You can even change the missile smoke colors to better fit with your custom design. While future Ace Combat games would still let you personalize your aircraft in some way through swapping emblems and choosing different skins, we haven't been able to swap the colors around freely like this since. In Ace Combat X, one of the super weapons that you'll run into during the campaign is the Meson Cannon. A ring of these things is set up around Griswold, the capital of Aurelia. During Mission 12, where you're liberating Griswold, these cannons will be a target that you'll need to deal with. The Meson cannons have two versions, a regular version and an upgraded version. There's a reason I put the word upgraded in air quotes. The normal version of the meson cannons have them firing in bursts. These bursts are much harder to dodge if you get close to them. The upgrade in question, where the meson cannons receive MBSRs, have them firing solid laser beams. The solid laser beams are easier to dodge, therefore making the MBSRs a downgrade instead of an upgrade. So whenever you hear your allies being like, "Oh no, the MBSRs made them more powerful," it's like, no, they didn't. They made the meson cannons worse. Ace Combat has had a weird history with nonsensical starter plane and special weapon combos for the very first mission. Ace Combat 4 has you doing a bomber intercept in an F4E where your special weapon is unguided bombs. Ace Combat 5 has you doing an air intercept mission against a Blackbird that then turns into an air-to-air battle against enemy fighters in an F5E with unguided bombs. Ace Combat X has you doing a bomber intercept in an F4E with napalm bombs. I don't know what the devs were on when they thought these plane and special weapon combos were good, but just why? Using air-to-ground special weapons against aerial threats isn't anything new for Ace Combat. People use FAEBs against the XBO and RCLs against the Igaion and her fleet all the time. Granted, those are big super weapons and not something like your typical bomber or transport plane, but you get my point. But for the very first mission in a fresh campaign playthrough, an incompatible special weapon makes no sense. Ace Combat 7 went through some pretty intense development hell, and some hints of that can be found in the final game. One such instance can be found towards the end of Rescue. Rescue has you partaking in a, rescue operation to save former President Vincent Harling, who became trapped in the space elevator after Erusia stormed the Yuzian continent. However, this rescue operation ends in complete failure. Not only does Harling die, but Trigger, the player character, is falsely accused and convicted of being the one to send the killing blow. However, this cutscene falls apart once you take a closer look at things, including Spare 6 Keystone's Cut Content 7. At the very end of the mission, there's an extra friendly F-14D that comes in from the west. Once it catches up to you, this friendly will fly behind you for the rest of the mission. When you fire a missile to trigger the ending cutscene, the game shows a Super Hornet flying dangerously close past you, signaling that something is amiss. Later on in the campaign, we come across Super Hornets that are not only AI controlled instead of being flown by human pilots, but are also flying with IFF spoofing technology. So, the logical conclusion would be to say that Erusia sent an AI controlled drone that was outfitted with IFF spoofing technology to fly in, assassinate the former president, and hopefully have the blame pinned on an Osean pilot in the confusion. However, according to Spare 6 Keystone, the Super Hornet that flies by is not a drone. Instead, that's Golem 1. Knocker. So wait, it wasn't a drone that assassinated Harling? Yup. You know that Super Tomcat that sticks behind you for the rest of the mission once it shows up? That pilot is George. George was an independent mercenary that was hired by Erusia to sortie with an Osean-marked aircraft with IFF spoofing technology to assassinate the former president. We can prove this by looking at George's character description, where it states that he was, quote, involved in the Trigger incident. We can further prove this by listening to George's voice line during Lighthouse, where he confesses to Avril that he was the one to assassinate Harling.
I've got something they might be interested in, Avril. Damn. I'm the one who killed Harling. I disguised my fighter as an Osean craft, so Oseo would be framed. It worked. One of their pilots got the blame. But that pilot went and saved my life. If he hadn't expelled the Erusian forces from Tyler Island, if he didn't hold off the Erusian army and give me a chance to escape, I'd be just another dead deserter. I told you it would be interesting.
Listen up, George. When this war's over,
I don't expect my confession to resolve things.
Here's the thing though, this confession is not in the final vanilla build of the game. What you just heard is thanks to the Skies Restored mod. So here's what I think happened. During Ace Combat 7's development, at some point the devs wanted to swap out who, or in this case what, assassinated Harling. So they cut George's confession, had a Super Hornet fly past you instead of a Super Tomcat, and either forgot or didn't have time to remove George from the mission. They also used Golem 1's Super Hornet model instead of an AI drone Super Hornet model, model for some reason. I can't think of a good reason as to why the devs wouldn't use the AI Super Hornet model unless there was some extreme confusion within Project Aces at this time due to the development hell that was going on. Speaking of development hell, a common negative that people who aren't fans of Zero cite is that it feels like a DLC or expansion to Ace Combat 5. Part of the reason could be attributed to the fact that 0 and 6 were being developed at the same time, with half of the team working on 0 and the other half on 6, or however the team was distributed if not in halves. The team working on 0 couldn't do anything super crazy in regard to innovations and features. That said, I think the team working on 0 did a superb job. Yeah, I am biased when saying that, given 0 is not only my favorite Ace Combat game out of the entire franchise, but also one of my favorite video games of all time. But seriously, to name a couple improvements and innovations, you've got the Ace-style gauge, all of the different enemy Ace Squadron fights where they use different tactics, the super weapons, upgraded wingman AI, and more, all while the core gameplay was the best the franchise had seen yet. Did you know that in Joint Assault, you can take more than one special weapon into battle? You can also choose to ditch special weapons entirely, taking 2 standard missile types into battle instead. Every other Ace Combat game only lets you take a single special weapon into battle along with standard missiles. As of this video, Joint Assault is the only Ace Combat game that lets you take multiple special weapons or standard missile types into battle. It's not the first game that lets you roll with no special weapons entirely though, with Air Combat and Ace Combat 2 lacking them. It looks like you'll be able to have 2 special weapons in Ace Combat 8 given the empty bar between your first special weapon and your flare count in the glimpses of gameplay we've seen so far. In Ace Combat 5 and 0, there are a couple of weird moments where the text "Hold Your Fire" shows up. Notably, if you use the tactical laser system against Hamilton and the Solg in 5, and if you shoot down the named Ace Grabok in the mercenary variant of Mayhem in 0. If you ever wondered which game has the highest number of named enemy aces in the campaign, that honor goes to Ace Combat 0. If you check out the assault records, you'll find that there are a total of 169 aces. If you're flying the Falcon in Ace Combat 5, here's a fun thing you can do. After you complete a mission, if you still have at least one tactical laser system charge left and you're in a mission that has a landing minigame, wait until the screen is about to fade to black. Fire your laser, wait for the screen to go to black, and when you begin the landing minigame,
come on, let's get a welcoming party going!
Blaze, begin landing checks. You're cleared to land.
Although the vast majority of aircraft in the Ace Combat series have either seen military service in real life or are original to the series, there are a couple of aircraft that were either prototypes or ideas that never even advanced beyond the drafting stage, but still appear in these games at least once. To give 3 examples of this, though there are more of these aircraft found within Ace Combat, you've got the YF-23 Black Widow II, the X-29, and the FB-22 Strike Raptor. The YF-23 was competing against the F-22, or as it was known at the time, the YF-22, the Y meaning a prototype aircraft, in the US Air Force's Advanced Tactical Fighter program. The YF-23 ultimately lost to the F-22, but that defeat hasn't stopped it from appearing in a number of Ace Combat games. The X-29, the X meaning experimental, was built to test things like forward swept wings and canard controls. It was also known to be a very unstable aircraft, with that fact reflected in its appearance throughout the Ace Combat franchise as it usually has a low stability stat. The FB-22 was proposed as a bomber variant of the F-22 Raptor, featuring the same stealth technologies and increased range thanks to it being able to carry more fuel. However, it never made it past the drafting stage, with the Air Force wanting to focus its efforts on making dedicated bombers that could far outmatch the fuel range of something like the Strike Raptor. In Ace Combat 4, did you know that in Stonehenge Offensive, the Erusians can be shot down by their own Stonehenge fire? Also, we're just going to ignore the fact that I didn't know what a widescreen patch was when recording this footage of Ace Combat 4 for my retrospective on it 2 years ago, hence why the gameplay looks stretched out. So, yeah. In Ace Combat 4, during Escort, why don't the Erusians use Stonehenge to shoot down the civilian planes? In this mission, you and the 2 civilian planes you're escorting are within Stonehenge's range. Keep in mind, these civilians know the inner workings of Stonehenge, and if ISAF gets to have a little chat with them to know what Stonehenge's weaknesses are, any modifications made to it since Erusia took control, etc., that could doom the super weapon. Even if using Stonehenge would be overkill in this case, I would think that it would be justified given it's either that, or these people potentially telling ISAF all of Stonehenge's secrets. I mean, Erusia did send fighters, so they did show intent to stop info about Stonehenge from being revealed, but I feel like at that point, just play it better safe than sorry and use the railguns. Did you know that in Ace Combat 3, there's a mission set in space? In both versions of the game, there's a mission that has you taking to the stars in order to destroy general resource satellites. This aircraft, or I guess space shuttle? Starfighter even? However you want to classify this thing, it even has a different handling model given the different environment. And lastly, did you know that Ace Combat Infinity is once again playable, both the campaign and the multiplayer? After 8 years, Infinity has been fully revived. Fun fact, the speed in which Infinity's multiplayer was revived is what made me do a re-upload of this video. It was nice to go back and fix the couple of mistakes that was in the original version, yeah, but again, the main motivation for this re-upload was the last fact about Infinity. In the original video that was published on May 17th, I said that only the campaign was playable. Only 3 days later, Infinity's multiplayer was up and running. I didn't expect things to advance so fast for Infinity, which is why I felt comfortable mentioning that as of that video, the campaign was the only thing that worked. It's so amazing to see Infinity fully up and running again after all this time. And that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you all for watching, I hope you enjoyed. If you know of any Ace Combat trivia that I didn't cover in this video, please leave a comment because I know for a fact that I didn't get to everything this series has to offer trivia-wise. Stay safe, stay healthy, and peace out.